Hello everyone and welcome to this online tutorial for Amazon Mechanical Turk, brought to you by the Columbia Experimental Lab for Social Sciences, otherwise known as CELS. My name is Leo Goldman and this is my fourth semester as the programming consultant for the lab and my final semester as an undergraduate at Columbia College. So last week we published a similar tutorial on how to use Qualtrics, which is a powerful survey tool for creating experiments that lets you take it online, or lets anyone with a link take it online. And so this week we're going to go over Mechanical Turk because it's a great way to get participants potentially on a very large scale. So although I can't take questions in the form of a webinar, I encourage you to reach out. My email is right there below, leo.goldman@columbia.edu. And if you go to the CELS page, which is also below, there's information on my weekly office hours, which are now being held via Zoom. So let's get started. So today we want to learn about Mechanical Turk. In case you've never heard of it before, it's a great way to get a lot of participants and really quality data on your experiment. So we want to get you to a place where you can launch and run your experiment on MTurk, and to do it in a way that's really well done and doesn't kind of cut any corners and really covers all of your bases and does smoothly what I call the post-launch tasks, right? So this is going to include things like worker qualifications, bonusing workers, and stuff like that, which I'll go into later on, but those are kind of crucial administrative tasks to keep your experiment running smoothly. Now, throughout this tutorial, I'm going to be referencing a GitHub account that we recently made public. The link is right below, and my goal is to have as much useful material in terms of kind of additional tips and notes, as well as scripts coded in, so far we have R and Python, that can really be useful in taking care of some of the tasks that we're going to talk about today as we go through how to use Mechanical Turk. So MTurk, or Amazon Mechanical Turk, was founded as the idea that it's kind of artificial intelligence, right? Because a lot of the tasks that are done by MTurk workers are tasks that people are looking to automate and need labeled data, right? So if I'm trying to train a, let's say, machine learning algorithm to identify pictures of dogs, well, I have to show that algorithm likely many photos of dogs and many photos that aren't dogs, which means I have to know if there's a dog in a photo. So I might publish, thousands of photos on Mechanical Turk and offer people a penny each per photo to tell me if that photo has a dog in it. So that's kind of a task that should be automated, but we're getting a human to do now in order to then train our machine learning algorithm. So in terms of Amazon Mechanical Turk, or MTurk, what is it? It's kind of a global marketplace where pretty much anyone with an Amazon account can post a job, and almost anyone with an Amazon account can accept a job and work at it. So again, from now on, I'm going to kind of refer to it as MTurk. You might also hear it called A-Turk by some people for Amazon Turk, or Amazon Mechanical Turk, all of the above, same thing. And really what it is, as I said before, is it's a huge marketplace for people to publish work and jobs, and it has over 100,000 workers, usually with more than 2,000 actually on the site at any time, right? So the idea is to outsource computer labor to humans, going back to the artificial intelligence thing, right? As a kind of fun side note, it's named after the Turk, which was a chess robot, in quotes, because it was actually a robot controlled by a chess master. It's the idea that you're doing labor that should be kind of automated, but is instead done by an actual human. So tasks on Mechanical Turk range from very quick kind of things that go from identifying a photo to hour-long surveys and experiments. That being said, compensation also ranges dramatically, right? So for a photo, you wouldn't expect to get more than 1 or 2 cents for identifying something quickly in a photo, whereas if you're taking an hour-long research survey, maybe you're getting minimum wage or even better. And so it's open to almost anyone with an Amazon account on both sides, and it's really not regulated, right? And that point is not to be underestimated because you can really no one's kind of telling you how to run your experiment on MTurk. So obviously you want to get an idea for what other people are doing, and I'm going to try to make you all familiar with kind of the baselines or how maybe you should be doing something or how most people do it. But at the end of the day, it's up to you, right? How much you pay workers is going to be up to you. How you deal with workers, how you run your survey, there's a lot of flexibility that you have. So it means that you kind of, on one hand, you want to be careful because you'll see in the news kind of stories about how MTurk is a place for workers to get exploited, and you don't want to be someone that's exploiting workers, but you also don't really know exactly what the best thing to do is in every scenario, and sometimes you have to kind of accept that. So before we go any further, let me just clarify a little bit of vocabulary that I'll be using. So we have workers and requesters. So the workers are the people that are accepting tasks and doing them for payment. And the requesters are going to be people like you who have a job or an experiment that they want people to complete, and they post it on MTurk. Now, they post it in the form of what's called a human intelligence task, or a HIT, right? So I'd say I posted a batch, that's the final point here, a batch of hits that, maybe N workers can complete, right? And when they do this, the payment structure is formatted in two parts. So there's the reward, which is kind of the baseline amount that they should expect to receive. And then there's the bonus, which is an additional compensation that can be based on performance, even though it doesn't have to be, right? And so I'll go into, again, the difference here. But basically, the reward is what's guaranteed on MTurk, right? They actually charge you before anyone accepts your tasks. They hold the funds while you've published it. And then the bonus is something that's not really, it's through MTurk, but it's not guaranteed by Amazon, right? So there's no way for the workers to know for sure that if they do this, they'll get the bonus, although they are typically trusting. And again, we'll talk about how you can keep your reputation up so that they do trust you and they do come back and you do continue to get participants for your experiments. So in general, as I said before, some tasks are very short and offer very low pay, as small as a penny per task. And that's something to keep in mind, right? Because research shows that the median wage is $2 an hour, but the average requester is paying $11 an hour, right? So that should kind of tell you that the average person who's publishing work is actually offering a decent wage, but the people that are offering lower wages, maybe because of the kinds of tasks that they're posting, are offering a much lower wage. So just because other people are offering a very low wage for maybe menial tasks or not so menial tasks doesn't mean that's where you want to fall, but you should be in mind of kind of the entire ecosystem of what's going on. And in general, Amazon is making a relatively large amount of money on MTurk in general, right? So basically all rewards and bonuses they're going to take at least 20%. And then for all rewards, which is the baseline fee, not the bonus, that are associated with hits that have more than 10 assignments. So if you're looking for more than 10 workers, which is almost always the case, they take an additional 20% on that reward. At the bottom of this, there's also a link for the kind of their pricing page that explains all of this if you want to get more details and kind of read the fine print. So a large question for researchers that are using MTurk to get experimental data is who's really taking my survey. A lot of researchers are kind of skeptical. They think that this is going to be very low quality data, that it's going to be somebody clicking through, or it might even be a machine. And that's possible, but in my experience, the data quality and the participants have actually been really good, right? So pretty much, as I said before, anyone with an Amazon account is eligible by default to be a worker, but each account is linked to a social security number, right? So Amazon is keeping track for tax purposes. So that means that I can't just make 1,000 accounts and send bots on those accounts to do that, right? Because I need a social security number for each account, and I can't reuse a social security number to make a new account. That being said, some people don't care about their account, and they will do things like try and make a program that completes hits that while they're not there, and those are the things you want to kind of be wary of and avoid. But in general, that's not a really big problem, and I find that the quality of the data collected is actually quite good. You also have some flexibility in terms of who takes your survey or your experiment, in that you can restrict it to the United States. You can do things like make sure that somebody who's taken my survey before doesn't take it again, and you can try to filter by quality of worker, and when I say that I mean based on their reputation, which we'll talk about more. And you can also restrict on certain other features. So for example, you could restrict on MTurk by something like age or political affiliation, whether they live in an urban or rural setting, but those are what are known as premium qualifications and are going to cost you much more. And so usually it's easier to just get that worker to take your survey and screen them out of your survey if you don't want them to take it, because for 40 cents a worker or something like that, it's not worth it if you're paying, $1, $2, or even $3 to do that for each qualification. So what's going to happen once you publish your experiment is you can get results really quickly. So that's going to depend a lot on what kind of experiment you've published and a lot on how much you're offering workers. But if you're offering a decent wage and there's nothing crazy about your survey, right, it's not 5 hours long or it's not incredibly difficult, you can get hundreds of responses kind of within a few hours, right? So you really want to make sure that it's all looking good before you publish it, because if you publish it, you walk away for the rest of the day, you could have hundreds of responses. Obviously, you can cap how many people take it. I usually start with, okay, just to make sure everything's going smoothly, I'll say only let 50 people take it. But once you're up and running, this is a really great way to get a lot of data quickly, right? And so as I was talking about before, you can restrict the pool of workers that can take your experiment based on their reputation. So for example, one qualification that I normally do is only allow workers with a greater than 99% hit approval rating to take my survey, right? And that's going to mean that of all the jobs that this worker has done, 99% or more of them have been accepted by the requester. And you can lower that threshold, right? So greater than 99% hit approval really generates seemingly high quality data. It looks like everyone's a human. If you drop that a lot, so I've tried kind of 95%, it does seem like you get some trash results. But even going down to 97% is usually okay. And that will also let you get results much faster if that's something that is important, if you are kind of in a rush. But in general, if you choose a high threshold and you have a decent pay that's kind of appropriate for what you're asking them to do, you should be getting high quality data at a pretty good pace. So when I keep mentioning worker qualifications, these are basically ways of filtering who can take your survey from MTurk, right? So there's existing ones that Amazon has built in, which is hit approval percentage, right? So only let people who have a hit approval percentage above 95, above 99% take this. And you can also create your own, right? And this is basically how you label workers to either make them eligible or ineligible to take your survey. So for example, if I'm publishing a batch every day of 100, but it's the same survey and I don't want somebody who took it today to take it tomorrow, I would publish the 100 today. Then I would kind of tag all of those workers with a label, something like previous worker, and then when I publish 100 tomorrow, say everyone can take this except people that have previous worker. And I'll show you how to do that in the demo. You can also come up with a tag that says eligible worker. So if you only want people who have taken round 1 of your experiment to take round 2, right, then you can tag everyone that's taken round 1 with a qualification called eligible worker, and then say only people that have the qualification eligible worker can move on and take round 2. So in terms of what people are actually taking your experiment, it's going to vary, but primarily it's workers in the US and India. And you can restrict it to only the US if you don't want this to be kind of a global experiment. But otherwise, demographics, it's fairly balanced. So the gender split is pretty even. The MTurk population tends to be a little bit younger than the US population. In terms of married and single, it's fairly even. And in terms of racial and income, it's actually not as imbalanced as you might think. So the racial breakdown is not too far off the US. The income breakdown is not as kind of low income skewed as you might think. And the education background is also more diverse than you might think. So there's a surprising number of people who have kind of higher degrees that are on MTurk, a lot of them are, maybe retired or just interested in participating in research. So I've only run research experiments, and so I'm not actually sure what the bias is. But you can get kind of the equivalent of the people that would walk into your lab on any given day on MTurk as you would in person, right? And so below I also have kind of the link for demographics.mturktracker.com. Lets you kind of actually watch on a day-by-day basis the demographics of the MTurk population. Although you can also ask that in your survey to see kind of what type of worker pool you are getting at. So here's an example of what workers see when they go to MTurk. So here's an example of all the, of one page of hits that they can see, right? And so as you see, a lot of them have a reward that's quite low, right? 1 penny, a few cents, up to 20 cents on this page. And some of them have extracting data from an image, and there's plenty of images to go to. For experiments, usually it's just, okay, take this one survey and you're done. But really there's a large variety of jobs that are posted on MTurk. Right? So in terms of extracting data from an image, here's an example, right? So tell us what is on this shopping receipt, right? And so you would label all the fields that they offer, and you'd keep going, and you might do tens or hundreds of these for a few cents each. In terms of experiments, though, that's going to look something more like this, right? So as you see on this page, there's a $16 hit where you are asked to make predictions about political events, and it says it takes about 2 hours, right? So that's going to be much more of the kind of researcher demographic, right? So you notice that $8 an hour, if it actually does take 2 hours, is not a terrible wage, and ideally, it gives them the full instructions and the consent form and everything so that they're aware of what's going on and they're choosing to participate in your survey. So now let me just go over a few of the basics before I actually show you how to create a batch on MTurk, right? So once you do that, they have a template set up for something like this where you just post kind of some instructions as well as a link to your survey, because it's used pretty frequently by researchers for this exact purpose. And then it has a box for providing the survey code here. And so you'll be familiar with this if you've listened to the Qualtrics tutorial, but the idea is if you're sending them to Qualtrics to take your survey, then you need to have a way to link their Amazon account to their survey response. On Qualtrics, I always give them a unique kind of survey code, right? Maybe it's a random number between whatever and whatever, but some type of unique survey code. And then this is where they're going to put it, right? So this is where it says provide the survey code here. That's where they're going to put that. And now I have the survey code that was generated for them in the Qualtrics database as well as in my MTurk results. And so here's kind of how you go about setting this up on MTurk, and I'll kind of go through this again as I do the actual demo. And you can choose, how much you pay them, how many people you want, how much time they have to take it. So you could limit that or not, right? Depending on if your survey is very long or is time sensitive, right? You can limit that. There's really a lot of flexibility that you have when you're creating a batch. And finally, again, I'll show this in the demo, is how we restrict workers, right? So we're going to add qualifications and criteria for who can take our project. So let's actually take a look at how we might set up a Amazon batch. Once you go to MTurk.com and you sign in as a requester, that's going to be in the upper right, you're going to have to make an account. And they're going to ask for information such as your employer and kind of why you're using MTurk. And they're going to ask for some billing information, which you kind of have to do all of that before you can get started. But once you do that, you can start to create hits. Under the Create tab, which is where you should start out, you can click something like New Project. And as I said before, right, they're used to a lot of researchers publishing an experiment that's run on another platform such as Qualtrics. So they just publish the survey link and have a box for them to put in their survey code. And so as soon as you click New Project, this is what is proposed to you, right? And for the research that I've done with Qualtrics and MTurk, this is actually the template that I've used every time. So feel free to kind of play around with the other ones on the left, but this has kind of tried and true done me well. So if I click on Create Project, then I'll have the options to start actually putting in the details for what I want to do. So I would name it, and so this is what the workers do not see this name, right? So might be, this is my Bayesian updating experiment, and then this is the title that they do see, right? So maybe academic research survey on probabilities, right? So something like that. And then usually in the title you want to put about how long it's going to take and what they can potentially earn, right? So usually I might do something like approximately 15 minutes and up to $3 or something like that, right? That would be a fairly generous rate, but you get the idea. And then the description and the keywords you can use to give them more information and to help your hit come up in case anyone is searching for something along those lines, right? So if someone only uses MTurk because they want to participate in research projects, which is not too rare, I think, you want things like research, survey to be in your keywords and description. Now down here is where you can choose how much to give per worker. So here's the reward per response, which again should be based largely on how long it takes and how many responses, the time allotted per worker. So I think the time allotted per worker is not usually to rush anyone, but if somebody accepts your tasks and then kind of walks away, you want it to kind of kick them out eventually. So if it's a 15-minute survey, I might give them 1 or 2 hours just to kind of not rush anyone. But, again, you have the power to kind of decide exactly how you want to run that. And then this auto-approve feature is also important, right? So when they accept your hit, they're basically guaranteed the base reward contingent on you not rejecting their work, right? And really, you'll see that you're not going to be rejecting a lot of people, if any. So this is what's the slowest they can get paid. So you can always approve their work manually right away. There's even an approve all button that'll show you that lets you do it for everyone, so it's just in one click. But in case you don't come back to it or you forget about it, you don't want them to go a week without getting paid, so you can set this as 1 or 2 days, and it basically approves everyone and pays them if you haven't come to it and manually decided what to do with them. Finally, at the bottom of this page is the qualifications area, right? So MTurk Masters, that's, again, something that's going to cost you an extra fee and be related to kind of Amazon has maybe vetted these people a little bit more. I've never really tried that. I've never had enough of a problem with data collection to do that. But if you add another criterion here, this is where you're going to start using qualifications that you'll definitely need, right? So the first ones are going to be something like hit approval rate. That is going to tell you, I only want workers that have a percentage approval rating greater than 99 maybe, so you can put that there. And then maybe you don't want any brand new accounts, so you can do something like number of hits approved is greater than 100, which means they've done 100 approved tasks on MTurk. And then usually what most people want as well is to have the location restricted to the United States, right? So you can do that as well and just enter the United States there. You can also filter by state. I imagine it's a little bit less dependable, but as you can see, you kind of get this flexibility. Finally, you can make it hidden, which means that only people that qualify for your tasks, your experiment, are the ones that can see it, and I usually just set that to limit any potential problems, right? And so once we have that, we can save, or we can move on to design the layout. Now, if we move on to design the layout, we'll get something like this, and so here is kind of what they're going to see, right? So this box under the blue, kind of thick blue header is where they suggest you put your survey instructions. So I always put the consent and some info on the survey here. And that's going to be repeated as well on Qualtrics if I'm running a survey there. But it's good that they see it here first because they can see this text before they accept the task on MTurk. Anything that's on your survey, they're usually not going to see until they've already accepted the task. So you don't want to put them in a position where they've accepted the task on MTurk and they're not in a position to take your survey on Qualtrics, and then you have to reject them. Because when you reject a worker, you damage their reputation, and for most of them, that's really what they're going to avoid, right? So they might not even care so much about the few dollars that you're going to pay them, but if you reject them, that's potentially really going to hurt them and potentially really upset them. But so assuming you've put all of that up here, then you can change the text for the survey link, and you're going to have to put your survey URL in there as well. So to do that, you're going to click on source, which is in this kind of editor header. So you click on source, and you have to find kind of where the survey link is, right? So right here, as you can see, is kind of the example survey link that they've put. So you might replace this is the actual text that they see, with something like, please click here to take our survey. And then you're going to replace the URL here with your survey URL. Once you've done that, you can click source again. Right now, notice it says, please click here to take our survey, and it's going to go to whatever link I put in there. I didn't put a link at this time, but that's all kind of set up. And you have a good amount of flexibility as to what they see here. This is usually all I've needed to run an experiment. And finally, you can click preview, and then you'll get to see kind of how it looks to an actual worker, right? So if I click this drop down, it brings out the instructions. Here's the survey link. If you've actually put in a real survey link, then you can actually click it and make sure the link is working, and then they would click the submit button if they've accepted the hit. And then after that, you can just click finish. Now, once you've done all that, when you're actually ready to get responses, that's all set up, then you can click on Publish Batch, and it'll show you a preview once again of the batch you've created, and you can click on Next, and it'll let you kind of name the batch, and it'll tell you all kind of the summary of how you are filtering workers, how much time they have, how much you are paying them, how much funds they're withholding from your account, right? So that's going to be the number of assignments times the reward that you're guaranteeing workers who get approved, and then plus their typically 40% fees on the reward. And once you're ready with that, you can click publish. All right, so now that you can feasibly be up and running almost, let's talk about some best practices for how to actually implement an experiment on MTurk, right? So the first thing that people always ask is, well, how much should I pay them, right? They're skeptical that they're getting as high quality data as they would be getting in the lab, so they don't want to overpay them, but they don't want to be one of those people who is, exploiting people on MTurk, so they don't want to underpay them. And so I usually recommend that researchers prorate the minimum wage, the federal minimum wage, which is about $7.25 an hour, and go kind of from there on how flexible you need to be, right? So maybe you really are short on funds and that's just not a rate that you can offer. But some people argue you should pay what you pay in the lab. Others people say really don't go below $6 an hour. But again, Amazon isn't going to stop you if you want to pay them, a penny for an hour of work. So you have all the flexibility, you just have to be careful with it. But in general, you should also make sure that you're paying workers in a timely fashion, right? So use that auto-approve setting that I talked about, or be really kind of vigilant with your survey, right? And so once you know you have responses, make sure to approve them and pay them. And also another thing to keep in mind is that they can see how long you take to pay on average, right? So if you're really slow at paying, that might discourage people from taking your experiment. Another few things to keep in mind is that workers can and likely will reach out to you. So this can be anything from questions that they have to comments that they have. I've had workers that kind of write very polite emails and say, oh, I think there was a mistake in your survey on page 5, and this question, only let me select one response when it said select all, right? That's something that's happened before, and I really appreciate it. That was a mistake that was in the survey. So they will reach out. they might reach out with a mistake. They might say, oh, I accidentally pasted my worker ID in your survey code box. Here's my survey code. And, then that's kind of, a real mistake. It's up to you on how you want to deal with those, but they're going to reach out. And the more you respond, the kind of happier they'll be with you, and the better reputation you can have, right? Because one thing to keep in mind is that they do talk, right? There are websites where they can talk to each other. They talk about different requesters, right? So when they take your experiment, they see your name, and so they're going to say that, John Doe was, really rude or isn't responsive, or, was actually very understanding and helped me after I made a mistake, and was, very nice, paid me very quickly. So one example is reddit.com/r/MTurk. And there are other links where where workers kind of review requesters, which you can find on the GitHub that we've recently made public. So once you get data, once you have people taking your experiment, you have to kind of go through kind of these MTurk motions, right? So you have batches that have progress and results, and you have to constantly be approving workers, paying them out, paying their bonuses if that's the setup you've done, and updating the qualifications if that's also relevant to your experiment, right? So for example, the two things that I usually are helping researchers with is, one, create a worker qualification that lets you label people once they've taken your survey so that they can't take it again if you don't want them to, and create a worker qualification if you want to make only repeat responses allowed, right? So if your survey takes place over 2 time periods and you only want to allow people that have taken the first one to take the second one, create a worker qualification that says, it could actually be the same one, maybe even, right? But says previous worker for round 1. And then when you publish that batch in that qualification area, you're going to say previous worker has been granted. Right, and so this is where you'll see, this is under the Manage tab on Mechanical Turk, your batches, right, and their kind of progress. And you can go to Review Results, right, which is right next to the Delete button as well. And once you're in the Review Results page, there's a few things you're going to do, right? So usually if you haven't approved the workers yet, you'll see a list of all the workers that have completed your experiment. And usually I'm just coming into this page to click Approve All, right? Unless I kind of know that a worker, I looked at my data on Qualtrics and I know that somebody completely disregarded our instructions. So I'll click Approve All, and then I'll click Download CSV. And that gives me the MTurk results file. So that's going to be when they accepted, when they finished it, that's their worker ID. It also gives me the hit ID, which is created by Amazon, and it also gives me the survey code that they have put into the MTurk text box. If I go into the Manage tab and then under Manage Workers, I can see all of the workers that have worked for me in the past. I can see if I've given them a qualification. I can see the approval rating. And if you'll notice the download and upload CSV, those are important as well. So if I click Download CSV, that'll then generate a CSV file that has information on every single worker I've had in the past. And if I click Upload CSV, that lets me assign qualifications in mass in a CSV file, right? So the download CSV file comes with fields like their current status for a qualification and then a cell to update their current status. And so if I enter a 1 in the update column for that worker and then I upload the CSV, it'll assign that qualification to the worker. So again, just to keep on reiterating, you might have to take care of these worker qualifications between every batch. Another thing you're going to have to keep in mind is paying out bonuses. Bonuses are done very inefficiently on the website. As far as I know, you would have to pay out bonuses one by one if you actually use the website. So for that, I strongly encourage you to go to the GitHub that's posted below, which has some scripts in R and Python. You can choose which one you use that basically take in your data from a Qualtrics CSV, assign a score and a bonus amount to that worker, and then generate if it's in R and you're using terminal, a file to run in terminal that assigns them all their bonuses, or if you're using Python, does that right through that script as well. So let's take a look at how we can what we can do in terms of managing workers. So if I go to the Manage tab and then I go under Workers, this will show me all of the workers that I've had so far, and really you're going to pay attention to these download and upload CSV buttons on the right, which will, as I said before, download all of the workers you've had, and if you then modify that CSV, which has fields for updating their qualifications, lets you upload that CSV and assign all of those qualifications in bulk. As I said before too, you can go to the GitHub and find ways to do this more efficiently using a script. Another thing to keep in mind is I'm going to go under the Manage tab to Qualification Types. And here is where you would create the qualification type, such as Previous Worker, which you'll then assign to people who have taken your hit before, so that you can block them in future batches so that nobody repeats your assignment. Then to see how that qualification can come into play, if you go back to edit your project, which is how you're going to publish batches, you can go to Add a Criteria, and then you'll be able to go all the way to the bottom and select any of the qualifications that you have created. So if I select Example Qualification, and then I change equal to has been granted, now only somebody with that qualification could take my survey. More likely, I actually want to do has not been granted. If example qual was used for labeling people that have taken my assignment or my experiment before, then this is a way for me to exclude them anytime that I publish this batch, right? So I'm now publishing a batch, assigning those people to that qualification, publishing a new batch that says only people that do not have that qualification can take it. This makes sure that every time I'm getting a new respondent. Now make sure that when you assign them a qualification, you're going to have to give them a score or a number. So I just put a number 1 for everybody that's been granted it. And so make sure you don't do is equal to 1 or 0, but you just use the has been granted or has not been granted option. Unless you're getting a little bit more complicated with qualification scores where, they can actually earn a score and it's not just being used as a binary, you don't have to worry about it. Just keep in mind to use has not been granted or has been granted. Alright, so now that your experiment is kind of up and running and you know how to do it from round to round, and you know how to exclude people that have taken your survey before, let's talk about how to actually pay out bonuses. Because I actually recommend that this is the largest portion of your payment. So if you are running a 20-minute survey and let's say you're paying $3, what I normally do is offer a reward, which is the one that's kind of built into the Amazon that's going to be auto-approved. Offer a reward that's pretty small, maybe 5-10 cents, and then say the rest of it is going to be in the form of a bonus. Now that might actually depend on how they do, right? So maybe you say, oh, you have to get this question right, every question you get right offers some reward. Or you might just be like, this is going to be a completion bonus. And once you complete the survey, you'll receive the other $2.90 within a few days, right? And the reason for that is, as I said before, if you have a batch that has more than 10 workers, that is looking for more than 10 workers, Amazon takes a 40% fee, but on all bonuses, they only take a 20% fee. So if you just have the 5 to 10 cents getting charged the 40% fee, and then the rest of it in the bonus, you can end up saving a lot of money, especially if you are offering a high wage or if you're looking for a lot of workers. Okay, so now remember that we're linking them between their Qualtrics response and their Amazon account with that random ID that they're putting in that text box below, right? So this is what I'm kind of thinking about when I'm talking about this, is that my Qualtrics database has a random ID that was assigned to everyone, and my MTurk database has the survey ID that each worker put in, and now I want to be able to link my MTurk workers to their response in my Qualtrics database. So I can do this with a variety of different tools. I've done it before in Excel. You can just have you can paste in the two spreadsheets and do kind of a VLOOKUP or an index match. If you use Stata, you could merge on the survey IDs. If you use R, you can merge or use which. Really, all you have to do is find some way of linking the two databases together. And then once you do that, you have to figure out how to pay them, right? So once you've linked the two databases, you basically construct their bonus amount, whether it has to do with if they got a question right or not, or if it's just a completion bonus. And now you're looking at how to pay out these bonuses in bulk. So this is what's going to use called Amazon or MTurk Developer. And this is going to require an Amazon Web Services account, which is free and easy to set up. And there's instructions for how to create that account and link it to your, essentially to your terminal or to your Python script in the GitHub if you are interested in going down this route. Although I've only kind of used the MTurk developer with terminal or Python, there are, as you can see here, a good number of options for which languages you can use to do tasks like paying out bonuses in bulk. And once you have that set up, you can basically run your MTurk account through the developer platform, right? So if it's on terminal, right, there are commands basically for anything you might think of, right? So get account balance, send worker bonus, all of these are there, and you can kind of run your account from terminal. The AWS API is pretty easy to use with Python as well, and they have fairly good documentation. And again, as you get kind of more into the weeds, I suggest you take a look at the GitHub or just reach out, and I'm happy to help you through all of that. All right, so thank you, everyone. I hope this was useful. I hope you kind of know what MTurk is now and how you can use it to get a good number of responses for your experiment. Again, I hold office hours for the rest of this semester from 2:30 to 5 p.m. on Wednesdays, from 10:30 to 1 p.m. on Thursdays over Zoom. So to get the Zoom link, just go to the CELS homepage, which is listed right there. And also feel free to reach out via email at leo.goldman@columbia.edu. Happy to answer any questions and maybe help or explain any of the code that's on the GitHub. Thanks so much.